Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Combaluzier, a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features GCM Mining. GCM is a mid-tier gold producer, having produced over 206,000 ounces of gold in 2021 from its Segovia Operations in Colombia. The company is also advancing its fully funded Toroparu Project in Guyana, which is one of the largest gold-copper projects in the Americas. Toroparu is expected to start production of more than 200,000 ounces of gold annually in 2024. GCM also pays a monthly dividend, which is competitive with its producer peers. And it also has equity interest in Aris Gold Corp, owning approximately 44% of the shares outstanding, and Denarius Metals Corp, owning about 29% of the shares outstanding. Today, I have with me on the webinar Mike Davies, the CFO at GCM Mining. The format of today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first part, Mike will provide an update on GCM, including an overview of its Segovia operations, where the company aims to produce 210 to 225,000 ounces of gold in 2022 and drill approximately 91,000 meters, along with providing an update on the development progress at Toroparu. In the second part of the webinar, we'll take your questions live. So please send us your questions using the chat function, and we'll get to as many as we can. And I'll note that you can type your questions in at any point throughout the presentation. To start, we'll handle the disclosures and then get into it. So for GCM Mining, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the GCM corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. And we note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for GCM-specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Mike to update you on GCM and what you have to look forward to with the company.
Great. Thanks, Taylor, for that introduction. Very comprehensive and much appreciated. And certainly thank you to Red Cloud for giving us another opportunity to update investors on the story of GCM Mining. Very volatile markets, but we're a company that's very dedicated to executing our strategy. And over the long term, we believe that that will drive value for our shareholders. So as Taylor mentioned, we are an emerging Latin American gold producer. We focused over the last 7 years in particular, since our CEO, Lomero-Poyatos, joined the organization, on really bringing around modernization and mechanization changes to improve operations at our flagship Segovia operation. It is the cornerstone of our key cash generating asset, and it is the key driver of what we're using to pay our dividend and certainly to lately fund repurchases of shares under our normal course issuer bid, which I'll talk about a little bit more in this webinar. We do have strong profit margins and a very stable, controlled cost structure. We are paying a monthly dividend, as Taylor said, and we now believe that the diversification part of our strategy that we're walking through will provide additional growth and scale for the company as we move forward in the next 10 years of our life. For the 6th year in a row last year, we replaced or increased the reserves that we had mined at Segovia. This is a key part of our strategy as we continue to very heavily explore this title at Segovia that has a lot of opportunity for us to grow our reserves and resources and extend mine life. Last year, we acquired Toroparu in Guyana. I'll take you through some more information on that. It's now fully funded as a result of a senior notes offering we did last year. So we're poised and ready to execute the strategy that we're following. We did release a positive PEA for Toroparu last year, now working on a PFS that I'll explain a little bit more on it today. So let me start out with the team. Led by Serafino Iacono, our executive chairman, one of the founders of the company in 2010, and Lomero-Poyatos, our CEO, with a tremendous amount of big company project experience behind him. These two gentlemen are leading the strategy that we are following to execute growth in this business, not just with our flagship Segovia project, but also in the Toroparu project and through our investments in some equity opportunities that we have. We have not only the know-how and the know-who in Latin America to be able to base our operating and mine building capabilities, but our track record of improvement, focus on health and safety, and ESG have all been pivotal to our ability to operate successfully in our projects in Latin America. We have two cornerstone projects that are really the key drivers of where this company is going to go over the next few years. Segovia, which we acquired in 2010, is a very prolific property. It's a district with high-grade underground mines, some of the top highest-grade underground global gold operations. We've been in production over the last 11 years since we bought the project, and in fact, the project dates back to the 1850s with more than 6 million ounces of gold produced over its history. It's a very unique title in Colombia. It's a historic mining district. It's a right of private property, meaning we're not subject to any limited time concession type life that you typically see with mining properties. We own the land and mineral rights and surface rights in perpetuity as long as we're exploiting. Last year was our biggest year of drilling at Segovia with over 97,000 meters. And as Taylor said, we've got another 91,000 meters of drilling planned this year, including a continuation of our focus on the brownfield targets, which are areas with documented prior mining activity and some current mining activity through our artisanal small-scale mining model, and give us a lot of opportunity to look for the future mines that Gran Colombia will bring into operation in the years to come. As Taylor also mentioned, Toroparu is one of the largest undeveloped gold deposits in the Americas. We made our initial investment in GoldX back in 2018 and held about a 20% position until early 2021, when we determined that it was time to move forward with our expansion strategy and diversify, adding a second geographic country, which is Guyana, to our portfolio, as well as bringing in another major project, one that has the ability to bring in a lot of gold production and cash flow generation for this company over its future life. There's an 8.4 million ounces of contained M&I gold resources in this project, another 1.2 million of inferred. And based on the PEA, over the next 24 years, once it starts up in 2024, we see 5.4 million ounces of gold being recovered from the project and over 140 million pounds of copper, which is a key component to the project for us as well, especially in this global market where copper is far more in demand than it was several years ago. We've got all the key permits in place. We are working steadily forward with the government on the mining license, which GoldX have drafted and which we're having modified right now to incorporate underground mining, which we foresee in the future. Expect to have that completed mid-year. We also found through the drilling program that GoldX had completed in late 2020 and the first part of 2021 that there are some higher grade gold structures in this deposit that are amenable to underground mining. So we've included that in a new geologic model, and that's included in the PEA that we've published last December. And we believe in Guyana. It's a country that supports mining as another major a cog in its wheel for the development of the country, in addition to everything that everybody is understanding is going on with oil. And so we see a lot of government support for this major $300+ million investment in the country that we're making. Turning to our capital structure, we've got 98 million shares issued and outstanding right now, 132.7 million on a fully diluted basis, including warrants and stock options. We do have a normal course issuer bid in place. We renewed it last October, and with that, we could buy up to about another 9.6 million shares. To date, we've bought back about 1.15 million shares, 200,000 shares last week when we came out of our quarter-end blackout. We're staying active in the market, certainly with shares being at the low end of that 52-week range right now. And our belief that we're undervalued, we'll keep chipping it away at our normal course issuer bid using our free cash flow to do that. We have a dividend program we inaugurated in late 2020. We're paying 1.5 cents Canadian per share per month. We're the only mining company that I'm aware of that's paying a dividend on a monthly basis to its shareholders. And at current prices, that's somewhere between 3.5% to 4% annual yield on our dividend. Since we inaugurated the dividend, we've returned over 18 million US of our cash flow to our shareholders. That's over about the last 18 months. And we've continued to declare the dividends. The next one has a record date of the 31st of May. We'll pay that on June 15th to our shareholders. From a valuation perspective, there's currently 3 analysts that are covering the stock. You've got Red Cloud at the upper end with a $17 share price target. I think Taylor sums it up very well in his latest report. This is a catalyst-rich year ahead. We do have some major things going on that I'll talk more about in this presentation with respect to the expansion of our Maria Dama plant, the PFS that's coming out on Toroparu in the third quarter, the mining license at Toroparu, and the ongoing drilling and exploration programs that we've got, not only at Segovia, but also at the Toroparu Project in conjunction with the PFS. Fundamental Research issued their updated report today. They've maintained their buy rating, a slight upward adjustment in their price, and they're pretty bullish on seeing a rally in gold miners. And Canaccord recently came out with their report when we announced on May 13th. They took our price down from $10 to $8.75. While they maintain their buy rating, and I think are very positive in terms of our specific execution of our strategy in both Segovia and Toroparu, they did reflect what I would call more of the sector-wide conservatism on mining stocks, which have capital projects with large capex ahead of itself. And although we've said that we believe it's going to cost about $355 million to build the Toroparu project, they've put a lot of conservatism in light of a couple of other issuers' recent experience into their target. We don't think that that's realistic, but when we come out with our PFS later in the third quarter, we'll certainly provide more clarity as to why we think they're being far too conservative in their target. And when we look at the undervalued situation, and we look at our numbers versus the peer group of companies in the TSX Global Gold Index, if you look based on current price to NAV, price to 2022 cash flow, our enterprise value versus the EBITDA we've got projected for this year, or versus production for this year, on all metrics, we are undervalued. And usually the first thing we hear from people is, what are we missing? And I think that what you'll see through this presentation is that if you take the sum of the parts of what we have invested as a company, not just the cash we have on hand, but our investments in Segovia and Toroparu, and our equity investments in Aris, as well as Denarius, the sum of the parts certainly gets us to a notional value that would be closer to peers, but we continue to trade at a fraction of that. And I don't think there's a good explanation for why, but we certainly feel the best thing we can do is stick to our strategy, execute, focus on what we can control, and time will play out. And in the meantime, we're returning value to our shareholders through the dividend. As I mentioned, from a production standpoint, we met our guidance for the 6th consecutive year last year with 206,000 ounces of production from Segovia. Costs are well controlled, and the increase in all-in sustaining cost in 2020 and 2021 reflected step changes we made in our business model in terms of what we're paying the contract miner and the small-scale miners in our title, to reflect an increase in rates that they had not seen since 2017 in light of the higher gold prices. Our AISC margins are running around 36%, so pretty high, and we've been able to maintain that. That's been a key contributor to the growth in our adjusted EBITDA, which was $174 million last year. With our current debt, we're seeing ourselves trade at our debt to EBITDA ratio at less than 2. And with Toroparu coming on stream in 2024 and bringing on more than $150 million a year of annualized EBITDA, we'll see that leverage ratio drop to 1 times or less. Cash flow metrics continue to be strong, a little lower last year as a result of changes that the tax authority in Colombia made to the timing to repay VAT refunds. Those have been delayed till second quarter of 2022. So that's affected a little bit of the year-over-year comparability of our cash flow metrics, but still running strong, and running strong in the first quarter of this year. We announced back in April that we'd produced 50,000 ounces of gold, which was on track with our expectation. With stronger gold prices, cash cost at around $817 and AISC around $1187. We had some pretty good numbers for the quarter. 45 million of EBITDA, adjusted net income of 14.8 million after removing all of the fair value adjustments related to financial derivatives. Operating cash flow was solid at 24 million, and free cash flow of 10.7 million was more than enough to fund the 3.5 million of dividends we paid and the $1 million we used to buy back stock. Production has been pretty steady. First quarter this year, 50,000 ounces was on track. We had another 18,000 ounces of gold production in April, bringing our trailing 12 months gold production at the end of April to 208,000 ounces. And we remain on track to do 210 to 225,000 ounces of gold production this year, taking into account the expansion in the plant that's going on at Maria Dama, as well as bringing on stream some expansion in the polymetallic plant that we've got at Segovia. Balance sheet remains strong. Cash at the end of March of 315 million US, working capital of 319 million. Our debt includes the 300 million of senior notes we issued in August last year to fund the Toroparu Project. Those are due in August of 2026. And then our convertible debentures, which are due in 2024 and are exercisable at 475, to me are a share issue waiting to happen. Segovia continues to generate free cash flow for us, some of which we're using today to pay dividends and the normal course issuer bid, and other of which we're putting on our balance sheet to give us some liquidity for the future, especially as we're building Toroparu. And given the monies that we've raised so far, and 138 million still to come to us in the stream facility we have with Wheaton that have been arranged by GoldX for Toroparu. Toroparu is fully funded, and the company has received B+ ratings from both S&P and Fitch Ratings. So let's dive a little bit more into Segovia, the first of the two core assets. It's in the northeast of Medellin, about 170 kilometers away, accessible by road and good infrastructure. We've got massive land packages there. We've got 3,500 hectares in our primary title on the top, which houses most of our current mining operations, and then another 6,000 hectares in an exploration license concession. In the southern part of that, you can see the Carla mine, which is our fourth producing mine. It's one of the highest grade global gold operations, as I mentioned. We have taken out over 1.5 million ounces at 13.6 grams per ton average over the last 11 years from this project. Last year, as I mentioned, was our biggest year of exploration. We did over 97,000 meters. Most of that focused on our near mine and in mine targets, with our producing mines of El Silencio, Sandra K, and Providencia in the RPP title, and then Carla in the Remedios title to the south. We also did our first 16,000 meters of drilling in our brownfield area in 64 holes. The red lines on this map denote veins that are known from previous mining, not only from the data that existed that we inherited when we bought Frontino Gold Mines, but also in some data we've been able to accumulate through studies since. And within those 27 known veins, we're currently mining 3, and we're now exploring the highest priority targets within the other 24. Just an example of the high-grade nature of the intercepts that we reported last year made their way into our annual resource and reserve update that we published in March. Some very high-grade intercepts spread all across the veins in our title, and this is what gives us lots of confidence that as we continue to drill, we'll continue to replace what we mine at high grades, and we'll continue to extend the life of this project. And just as important, when we look at some of the key intercepts from the brownfield areas that we looked at last year, Vera, Marmajito, Manzanillo, and La Guarida, again, continue to see high-grade intercepts. What's also interesting is the Vera mine, the first mine on that chart. You can see some really phenomenal silver grades, which come from the eastern side of our title, which is something we're beginning to understand more about. It is very prolific on the silver side, on the eastern side of our title. That led to our annual reserve and resource update at the end of March. We increased our M&I resources to 1.6 million ounces. That was up 14% from the year before, and a 41% increase in inferred to 1.7. We also took our reserves, which is the gold part of the bars there, from 633,000 ounces in 2020 to 745,000 ounces in 2021. This is a key part of our strategy at Segovia: continue drilling to add more to the reserve category and continue to firm up our reserve category for ongoing longevity of these mining operations. And so this year we've set aside a budget of for 91,000 meters, with 67,000 meters planned at our company mines and 24,000 meters at our brownfield targets. We've got 13 rigs in operation, and we expect to have a drilling update mid-year of the work that we've been doing through the first half of this year. But we're very confident that this shallowly exploited title has lots of ongoing exploration, and we continue to see it as we're drilling. And that's why we believe that Segovia, as much as it's been around for 150 years in the past, is going to be around for many decades in the future. And we've got a number of key infrastructure projects in place at the moment at Segovia. The Maria Dama plant, which has been around from the beginning, is being expanded from 1,500 tons a day to 2,000 tons a day, an expansion that's expected to be completed here in the second quarter. And then we'll run the plant at 85 to 95% of that new capacity in the second half of the year, giving us some additional gold growth in the second half of this year. Our El Chocho tailings storage facility, world-class facility with dry stack tailings, filter presses, continues to be a key enabler for us as we take on the environmental aspects of processing material, responsibly storing it, and eventually, as you'll see through some new ESG videos we'll be putting out the next month, turning the ultimate tailings storage facility into parkland for the community. And last year, we acquired and completed the construction of a new polymetallic plant in Segovia. Also will be featured in an upcoming video that we'll be publishing. Key for us is really two things. It's an opportunity for us to recover additional cash flow from our zinc and lead content in our tailings, not previously captured by us. Certainly, when you look through the historic records of the project, you can see that the owners back in the 1950s through 1970s were recovering zinc and lead in some very large quantities. Our polymetallic plant has been operating since October. We've just finalized the contract terms with an international customer for offtake, and we expect that we'll have our first shipment starting here in June for the materials. That should give us somewhere between $25 and $35 an ounce of additional byproduct credit in our production cost. And I mentioned at the outset that we have a strong belief in ESG as a key enabler of our strategy. Our focus in Segovia has always really been around education and community programs, environment and health and safety as our key cornerstone pillars in terms of establishing our ESG programs locally. We do have an ESG committee of the board that was formed about 18 months ago that oversees the ESG programs. We've now got a new ESG committee of our managers in Colombia overseeing the day-to-day ESG initiatives. And that links up to us corporately through our corporate ESG manager who was hired about a year ago. We have another ESG report coming out in mid-June, and we'll accompany that with some videos that I think will bring to life and living color an opportunity to have a look at what we're doing. So please stay tuned for that, because it's very, very interesting and shows you just how far this company has gone to be able to perpetuate our social license to operate in the Segovia Remedios title. And one of the ways that we've been able to do that is through our artisanal miner contract model. It's focused on small scale mining, which has existed in the title for decades. What we've done is taken what was once considered illegal miners. We've formalized them into cooperatives. We've got 61 agreements at the moment, and they are now considered legal miners. They're working in designated areas in the title, and you can see in the map the little X's where many of them are operating. They are working under contract with us, bringing the material to our plant where it gets weighed and sampled and processed, and we pay them based on the recovered gold from that material. It's anywhere from a couple ounces a week up to 50 ounces for some of the larger ones. We're paying a very competitive local rate for this. We're providing health and safety, environmental training. We're also providing some funds to help the miners improve their equipment. It's a business model that is working very well for us. And again, there's a video that we have coming out profiling this in more detail within the next month. It'll be on our website that, again, I'd encourage you to watch. Very empowering to see how we've been able to make a difference in the perception of the community to our presence in this title. And then over to Guyana. It's our newest jurisdiction. We believe Guyana is a great opportunity for us as far as the country goes. English speaking, English law, very receptive to mining, or very receptive to us through the meetings that we've had with the senior government since last summer. We completed the acquisition in June and then closed a $300 million financing in August of 6.875% senior notes. They're unsecured. We pay interest twice a year in February and August. And with the Wheaton facility, the development of the Toroparu project, from our perspective, is fully funded at this point. The drilling last year that was completed by GoldX gave us a new understanding of the geologic structures running through the title. And with that, we're able to delineate a new resource, an updated resource with 8.4 million ounces of gold in the M&I category, 396 million pounds of copper, a million ounces of gold, and 1 million ounces of silver. 6 million ounces of silver in the deposit. And we believe very strongly, not only in starting this with an open pit operation, but by year 10, we will have mining taking place from the underground areas at depth, which were identified through the recent drilling program. This will give us some additional grades and volume in the second half of the life of this project, and some tremendous returns as we look at the PEA that we filed last year. 24 years of mine life operation starting in 2024, over 225,000 ounces of gold a year annual production, but 2 very robust years in the beginning that allow us to have a 2-year payback of the initial $355 million of capital. At gold prices of $1,500 an ounce, $20 an ounce of silver, and $3 a pound of copper, we've got a project with free cash flow of $1.7 billion over its life, an after-tax NPV of almost $800 million, and a very strong IRR. We're currently working through the PFS on this project, which we expect to have completed in the third quarter of this year. One of the avenues that we are going to be updating in terms of our approach to mining this project will be to go from self-mining operation, where we would buy the equipment up front and operate the mine ourselves, to a contract mining model where the contractor will bring the equipment and operate the mining operations over the life for us. That will give us some relief in the upfront CapEx, which should more than cover any inflation that we may see as we're working our way through the capital program. We're still very confident that we'll be somewhere between $355 million and $370 million of CapEx at this point. And with that, we continue to be fully funded in this project. We've assembled the project team. We've brought together a number of people with international experience, as well as experience specifically in Guyana, some of which have come from the Aurora Gold Project, previously owned by Guyana Goldfields. We are working on pre-construction activities at the moment while we complete the PFS and get the mining license completed. Those pre-construction activities include the mine camp, the road from the Ida Valley port to the coast into the project, the airstrip at the project being upgraded and expanded to be able to bring in larger planes. And we're getting started as well with evaluating some of the long lead term items and getting some of the key mine contractors, including the mine site contractor and the power supply contractor lined up. So once we get this PFS completed, board approval to move forward formally with construction, we'll be ready to go in the third quarter and be on our way to successfully complete the construction to commence production in 2024. By year 6, our vision is that we will expand capacity from the initial 7,000 ton a day gold leach plan to a 14,000 ton a day operation with a second plant, a copper concentrator. That'll allow us to start to bring in the copper over the last 19 years of the project. I mentioned that's 141 million pounds of copper production. By year 10, we will have reached the point that we can start to descend with some ramps, the bottom of the pits, into underground mining. And you can see in the second half of the mine life, some very large years of production as we are able to exploit some very high grade areas of the mineralization that have been identified through drilling. And this project continues to be open at depth and open along strike. So we expect that there's more to be found in this project as we continue our drilling over this project. And then lastly, before we get to Q&A, I just want to highlight, we do have, as mentioned, 2 equity investments. We own 44% of Aris Gold. Aris initially was focused on Marmato and the Juby project in Ontario, and is making its way through the initial stages of the construction of the lower mine now for the expansion into the deep zone of Marmato. But they've also recently signed a deal with Mubadala to acquire a 20% interest in the Soto Norte project, and they've become the operator now of the Soto Norte project. It's one of the largest undeveloped gold projects in the world. It's tier 1 scale and economics, and is going to be a tremendous project for Aris Gold. And we see a lot of value in our holding of that stock as a result of this acquisition that they're making. We're also equally excited about Denarius. Denarius, we have a 28.6% interest in. Its flagship project is the Lomero project in the Iberian Pyrite Belt in Spain. It's a prolific polymetallic project with 21 million tons of gold, silver, copper, nickel, lead and zinc in the project. Denarius is about 20,000 meters through an initial 23,000 meter program. We've been verifying the historic resource and expect that by the third quarter, we'll be publishing an updated resource with the drilling results that have been attained by Denarius, as well as starting to publish a scoping study for next stages for this very prolific project. In the meantime, Denarius is also completing an exploration program on the Guia Antigua project that sits in the eastern side of the Segovia title, and IM Gold is continuing with the Zancudo project that they've got optioned. So with that, I think we've got a great company, strong management, strong free cash flow, and a healthy balance sheet, lots of exploration upside in our core projects. We've got assets in very attractive jurisdictions, pay our dividend. And when you look at the sum of the parts, we've got some tremendous assets that add up in value to far more than what we're getting in the market at the moment. And as I said, I think our belief is focus on what we can control, our cash, our costs, and our execution. And in time, we expect to close that gap on valuation. So with that, Taylor, maybe it's the right opportunity to move to the Q&A portion.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Mike. That was a great presentation. So now we'll turn, as you just said, to the Q&A portion of the webinar. And just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type in your questions at any point. So with that, we do have a number that have come in already from the audience. Maybe I'll start with one of the more recent ones that came in on talking about Aris here. Just wondering if you have any, are you satisfied with the development, I guess, at Marmato that's occurred to date, and kind of what's your view on Aris? I know you mentioned the recent acquisition there, Soto Norte, which is a company changer down the road. Maybe if you just have any comments on that.
Yeah, first of all, Aris has a tremendous management team and board, a lot of very well-known names, and I think over the long term, this team is going to generate significant value for us in that investment. Obviously, coming into Colombia, getting their arms around the project and be able to put their stamp on how this is going to move forward. Maybe it's taken a little bit more time than maybe some people expected up front, but we're very pleased with the progress that they are making. We certainly see that they're moving forward quite steadily now with the Marmato mine update. Certainly the upper mine, the turnaround is showing up in their recent Q1 numbers and their guidance for this year. And they've been, searching, and I think have been set out with their strategy. They're not focused on being a single project company. The Soto Norte project has been known for some time, but it's certainly a project that's got world-class tier 1 scale, and we're very excited to see how this is going to play out. And through our presence in Colombia and our position on the board of directors of Aris, certainly our know-how and know-who in Colombia is going to be advantageous to them as well as they work through the permitting side of that project going forward. So we very much believe that that investment in Aris is going to be very good for our shareholders, and we're happy with that position.
Great. Okay. I guess let's turn to Toroparu next. So we have a couple questions here. You touched on the capex and how you plan to kind of come in line with that, having made that change to contract mining, or looking to make that change to contract mining. We do have a question wondering if you've ordered vehicles, machines, or secured prices on anything of that nature.
No, again, we are doing a lot of the homework and the engineering, and certainly getting the key contractors lined up. The site contractor particularly there's a number of lead time items. We've made deposits on a few of these things. Certainly with the power supply contractor, we'll start in the next couple of months with some deposits on things. But again, the contractor will be responsible for bringing that to site. Similarly with the mining equipment, by going to a contract miner, we're down to a couple of final horses in the race that initially started out with many more. And again, once that's done, they'll certainly work at getting the mining equipment. So we're getting ourselves poised that when the PFS is ready in the third quarter here to be signed off, we can immediately get started. There won't be a time lag before we get moving. Obviously, on some of the longer lead time items with the plant, we are getting into some of that speccing now, so that, again, we can move quickly on those items once the PFS is ready.
Right. Okay. And then we do have a question here, again on Toroparu, just, wondering, I guess, what makes you confident that you'll start production in 2024, I guess, is what they're wondering.
I think from our timelines that we have, the team's working on, still very comfortable that we've got enough leeway in the schedule in order to be able to be ready on time. So, and again, that'll be clarified when we get around to releasing the PFS. But at the moment, the team managing the timelines is very comfortable that first quarter 2024 is still viable. Okay,
great. Okay, let's turn to Segovia, I think, here. So in terms of, let's see here. I guess let's start off with this one. We kind of expected this one would come. Just wondering if you have a comment on the potential impact of the presidential election down there in Colombia.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions on that as late, certainly with how other elections have gone in South America. I think, it's this week is round 1 of voting. So we'll know, soon after this week how it'll play out in terms of the next round, which will come middle of June. There's thinking that it'll probably narrow down to 2 candidates, one being left and one candidate from the center right. Our team in Colombia is not concerned about this. I mean, we do know that, Colombia is a country that does have a Senate and does have a Congress. The left certainly doesn't control either of those chambers. So any kinds of changes in laws or rules will certainly require more time. This will not be an overnight change in policy by the country or whatever. So at this moment, we're expecting, still feel strongly that maybe the center right candidate is going to prevail, but we'll have to wait and see, and we'll take our cue once we come through the election. But we are not concerned in terms of how it'll affect us.
Okay, great. And then again with Segovia, you talked about the significant amount of drilling you've got going on this year. Maybe it might be, I guess, helpful to hear just from your perspective what the biggest opportunity is with this drill program to kind of grow and add resources at Segovia. Sometimes it's hard when there's you've got different programs. You've got the infill, the near mine, and kind of greenfields going on. I guess what's the biggest impact, do you think, from your perspective?
I think, well, as we've seen again last year with the 97,000 meters we drilled, the two biggest areas that grew were El Silencio and Sandra K. These are, El Silencio is the oldest and the deepest of the mines, but surprisingly still is showing lots of opportunity. The discovery of two new veins last year, not at the deep part of the mine, but in the middle of the mine, close to existing infrastructure, certainly was a very positive development from our mine geology drilling program last year. So I think continuing to see evolution of the El Silencio mine, we've got a lot invested in infrastructure there, as well as the Sandra K mine. It's the of the three mines in that RPP title, it's the youngest and probably the shallowest of the three. It goes down about 400 meters. But the drilling continues to show a long strike as we're going deeper, that we're seeing higher grades. And we certainly saw with the drilling last year, again, an increase in the resources for the mine. Providencia is sort of playing out as we'd expected. We've gone through some of those really super rich grade areas that we'd mined in 2018, 2019, early 2020. Still, I think has room to grow, but Carla is going to be the other one. It's the youngest of our mines that we're mining. And as we drill at depth, we're getting some really nice grades. So infilling some more and understanding where we can take the development. And then I think the brownfield strategy continues to hold a very significant upside for us, that you've got 24 areas where there was previous mining activity undertaken from Frontino that stopped once, they vacated the country. You've got artisanal mining going on in those areas. The top 6 artisanal miners probably do about 80% of the gold production that we are getting from our artisanal small-scale mining model. And they're north of 15 to 20 grams a ton, operating more at surface. So if that's the kind of grades they're getting in those areas, and they're doing, last year we did 33,000 ounces of gold of our 206,000 ounces from that small-scale mining. That bodes well for us as we drill in those same areas, down dip deeper to identify mining areas for the future for us. And that, to me, I think is what we are trying to do. This is a mining district. It's not one particular mine that carries the day. It's a mining district. It's been shallowly exploited, not had a lot of drilling over the years, certainly not in our initial 8 or 9 years. We were really focused on building a resource and validating that there was something of substance there, plus getting enough intel to be able to build our proper mine plans around those 3 mines. Now we're into a whole new world where we've got operational and financial stability that we can really start to put drills into those brownfield areas. And I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised by what we find as we, extenuate this drilling program in those areas.
Perfect. Okay, we have a question here wondering, what's the percentage of the cost of fuel compared to your total costs, and maybe just wondering if there's any inflation in costs due to rising fuel prices.
Yeah, fuel's not an overly large component of our costs. We use more hydroelectric in our operations. And so we've not really seen inflationary impact as a result of fuel affecting our costs. In fact, in recent couple of months with the peso devaluating as it has, it's given a little bit of offset in our US dollar cost relative to where we were before. So inflation in Colombia for us has not been a real detractor from our ability to have our cost structure stay pretty stable.
Okay. And then I have a question, just wondering if there's any update, I guess, with regard to Western Atlas.
Yeah, Western Atlas is, it's about $1 million investment for us. It's not very large. We're over $1 billion balance sheet now. They're continuing to evaluate their results, but I can't say I have a whole lot of information to update on Western Atlas. Our focus these days is more on certainly on what's going on in Denarius as it's pushing its way forward, and what's going on at Aris when we look at our equity portfolio. Right.
Okay. And then we've had a couple different questions come in. Just with regard to the dividend,
Mm-hmm.
just I guess with respect to timing, doing the monthly dividend as opposed to a quarterly or half-year dividend. Just wondering if you have a comment on that.
Well, we started with a quarterly dividend because we announced this in sort of the late stages of the first year of COVID, and we wanted to really inaugurate the dividend given where gold prices were, but also just make sure that we weren't biting off more than we could chew by going to a monthly basis. But administratively, monthly is not a burden for us. And what we've been hearing from investors that they like receiving their cash check every month. For me internally, I like the discipline of, paying it every month as opposed to every quarter. And I think it's a reminder to investors every month that we're generating free cash flow. We feel very comfortable in returning that to shareholders as we are. We'll probably wait till the Toroparu operations are up and running before really considering an expansion of that dividend rate per share. I think the only other thing that might have us think about it, increasing the dividend between now and then may be hoping that all these prognosticators that think that gold's going to go to $3,000 an ounce, that it gets there or somewhere close. But for now, I think, steady as she goes. Return that money every month, pay some of that return that we're getting from Segovia to our shareholders, and then putting money on the balance sheet, because when you're building a project like Toroparu, it's good to have some rainy day funds available to you. If not, I've also then built myself some money that as we get successful in that drilling program in Segovia, I can move forward quite aggressively to develop those areas without having to cannibalize any of our existing plans for CapEx. So some for today and some for the future is the best way, I think, to sort of make sure that we're covering all bases as we execute our strategy.
Great. Okay. So I think we are about out of questions here. So I'll kind of leave it with you if you have a final word, for investors, maybe outline the key catalysts or key things to pay attention to going forward, and then we'll sign off. But I'll give you the last word here. Yeah,
great. Well, we would like to thank everybody for taking their time today. I know it's valuable to spend with us and talk about Gran Colombia. I've got, monthly we're reporting the dividend, obviously, in our production. So we're keeping people up to speed with our production as we go. Q2, we expect to see a catalyst and completion of the mill expansion, and then starting to see the growth in our production in the second half of this year. The PEA will come out in the third quarter, as well as the mining license at Segovia, and then drilling results. I'm expecting an update on the Segovia one mid-year, and then a couple more updates later this year. So it's as you said best in your report, Taylor, it's a catalyst-driven year, and we'll just keep reporting on those catalysts as we keep going.
Excellent. Well, it's been a great almost hour that we've spent on the webinar. So with that, I'll sign off. And thank you, Mike, for taking the time today to host the webinar with Red Cloud Securities. And thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in with us.
Great. Thank you.